Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back. So for today's video, we're going to be discussing another Mattel collector doll release. This time it is Alice from Alice in Wonderland. You guys might know that I've been kind of making a habit on my channel now of making individual videos for Mattel's collector doll releases that I think are especially bad. It used to be that I would just cover stuff like this in my Dolls I Don't Want videos, and I do still touch on that, but whenever there's a release that I think is like particularly handled poorly or like the price is really bad, then I feel like at this point I'm just sitting down and making individual videos for it. I did it with like the Rochelle Monster High doll. I also did it with the last Disney release of Mattel, the Maleficent one. So we're here again to discuss another Mattel collector doll. Like I said, it's Alice from Alice in Wonderland this time, and I don't think that it's the worst release that they've ever done, but I don't think it's good. So, as always, this is just my opinion, and if you love this doll and you think she's worth the price, that's fine, and like, more power to you for being happy, you know? Like, I'm not trying to yuck anyone's yum here. I'm not trying to say that you're wrong if you like this. I'm just kind of giving my opinion here, so if you disagree, it's totally cool. We're all good. And as you go through the video, if you do enjoy, if you could give it a like, that's super helpful to me, and if you're new here, welcome. Maybe subscribe if you enjoy your time. But with that, let's go ahead and start diving into this Alice release. Also, if I sound kind of winded, it's because we ordered a couch and literally right before I sat down to film, it was delivered, and so I had to like lug it up the steps into my apartment. And it was very heavy, and I'm asthmatic, so I'm a little... Anyway, that doesn't matter. Let's talk about the doll. So I'm going to talk about this kind of in the order that I experienced this release, because at first I had actually very positive opinions on it. So I first saw the reel on Instagram about this release, and the like image that stuck with me the most is this one. I'll have all the images on screen obviously for you guys. So it's Alice, but the doll is kind of depicting the moment in the original Alice in Wonderland Disney movie where she like, I can't remember if it's the drink me or the eat me that makes her big, but she gets too big and like she's kind of out of the house. And I actually thought that this was very interesting. Like, I think this is a very unique scene to use for the doll. I feel like it's pretty creative to decide to do this. So originally I had very favorable opinions just because I thought this was not something that I would have thought of to turn into a doll. And so I think that it's really cool. And I still do maintain that opinion in that sense. Like, there are obviously negatives that we are going to get to like as we go through this video, but I do think this is a really creative idea, and I do think that it's a very interesting scene to kind of depict in doll form. So that's one good thing. Like, I'm not gonna pretend that there's only bad things about this release. I do think that that's very interesting. Looking at the doll when she doesn't have the house on her, you know, I think that Alice is a hard character to make a really interesting design out of if you want it to be more movie accurate, because she does have a fairly simplistic design in the animated film. Like, there's not a whole lot that you can do without taking away a lot of the accuracy. I do like the lace and like the extra embellishments in her apron. I think that that's very pretty. I think that it's a good way to subtly add a more detailed layer to it and like a more collector level layer to this doll without really taking away from Alice's original appearance. Here's where we start to get into some of the negatives though. She doesn't have wrist articulation, which I think is just a weird thing to do. I don't know. I'm very much an articulation person. It's very hard for me to buy dolls that aren't articulated. Like, I have to really love a doll without articulation to want to buy them, and especially at a collector level. And we've seen Mattel's collector level dolls before with wrist articulation, so there's no real reason to me for them to not have given Alice wrist articulation. It's kind of a bummer. The other thing that a lot of people are pointing out that they don't really love is the fact that Alice doesn't have stockings. I don't know in the movie if they're like full-on tights or like socks. I'm not 100% sure, but in the movie design, she does have some sort of stockings on, and she doesn't have that on the doll. So if they're going for more of a movie realism, they did kind of miss out on that one, and I feel like a lot of people really associate Alice. That sounds weird, but I feel like the socks are kind of a key point in her design. I don't know why. Like, it's kind of, if you take a step back, it's kind of a small thing to focus on, but I do think that they're kind of a key thing in her design. So it is a little bit strange for them to take that off of this collector level doll. I don't know. Kind of zooming in a little bit more here. These shoes I do think are cool because they have the little like drink me bottles for the heels. So like, I like them. But someone commented on the TikTok that I did reacting to this, talking about the fact that they're very Monster High-esque sort of shoes for a doll that otherwise seems like it's trying to be fairly movie accurate. And I do absolutely get that complaint because they're right on the money. Like, as a Monster High fan, I think these shoes are really, really cool, and I think that it's a interesting little nod to the Drink Me potion. But if they're going for movie accuracy, it is a little bit strange. So depending on like what you like in your dolls, you might like or dislike the shoes. I can understand why people are criticizing them, but I do personally like them. That being said, what I don't like is the fact that the buckles on her shoes aren't painted. Like, we're gonna get to the price after I say everything, okay? So you'll understand why this is kind of bothersome if you haven't heard the price already. But I think that for a collector level doll to not have the buckles painted on her shoes, it's just really, really weird. Like, there are other Mattel dolls, like the Monster Ball Cleo that I reviewed recently had a ton of painted details on her shoes, and she was $30 in the US. So for a collector level doll, they can't paint like one detail on the shoe. I don't know, that one was a little bit bothersome to me. Moving on into the face, I have seen other creators and other just people in kind of the doll sphere on the internet talking about how her face looks pretty pixelated. I don't think that it's like the worst. I'm sometimes kind of bad at noticing that unless I have a doll in my hands. Like Barbies, sometimes with the stock photos I can't really tell that their faces are pixelated, but then if I buy them I'm like, oh okay, yeah, now I see it. So I don't want to like speak over anyone who probably is noticing more than I am. I will say that I don't think the pixelation is like a horrific degree of pixelation, but it is kind of borderline inexcusable to have any pixelation on a collector level doll. Like, if you're going to make it collector level, I feel like the quality should really, really be there. So having a face that is a little bit more pixelated is just weird. Like, I don't know what else to call it. It's strange and it's not ideal. Not great. Kind of moving on to something a little bit more positive. We're back to the house, which I still think is just such an interesting thing. And then the fact that it does come with like furnishings and also the white rabbit here, I think is a really, really cool design point. It's not necessarily something that you could use unless you're like also a Polly Pocket collector. I feel like maybe the little itty bitty Polly Pockets could fit in here, but it's not necessarily something that's useful. However, I do think, again, on a collector level doll, the detail of having like a chair and a bed and a clock inside this house that you can stick onto Alice is really cool. Like, I think it's a fun addition and a fun layer of detail. Would I have rather there was detail in other aspects of this doll? Yes, like, I definitely would prefer that the detail had gone into the wrist articulation or a smoother face-up. But at the same time, I don't want to be unfair, so I want to, point out the positives when I see positives. For me personally, you might hate the house, but I do think that it's really cool that they included this. And then I guess the last thing to cover is the box. I'm someone who unboxes all of my dolls. Sometimes I'll save the packaging if it's like really, really nice, but this is not something that's necessarily catered to me. And I guess I should have said also, I'm so bad at intros lately, sorry, but I'm not like enough of an Alice in Wonderland fan to even have considered this doll before I even saw what she looked like. Like, we had a little teaser on the Instagram for, I believe, Mattel Creations that was letting us know that something Alice in Wonderland was coming soon, and I was curious, but I'm not a big enough fan to have wanted to buy it pretty much regardless of how well executed it was or what character it was, unless maybe it was the Cheshire Cat. So I guess take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt because I'm saying it as someone who's not a super big Alice fan. But anyway, back to the box. I do think that it's a pretty box. Again, not like a packaging person necessarily, so it's not something I feel super strongly about. But again, I feel the need to try to be a little bit more fair and balanced and point out the positives when I see them. I feel like if you like packaging, this is a pretty cool box. So with all of that being said, the problem here is that this doll is $100 US, which as always means that if you are getting her outside of the US, there's going to be some sort of markup. Sometimes it's a little bit, sometimes it's a lot, but like keep that in mind. $100 US translates to more in other countries and other currencies, and even the $100 price point is just so bizarre. Like, I'm talking about these negative things as we go along, And depending on the price, it might be like, well, that's not great, but it's not the worst. But when you add in the fact that this doll is $100, the fact that she doesn't really have wrist articulation, not super, her somewhat pixelated face, definitely not super, the fact that she doesn't have socks, like there are $30 rainbow high dolls that have socks. So for $100 we couldn't get some sort of sock on there. It's just a little bit rough, and that's what people are really upset about, and that's what people are always upset about Mattel releases, and that's the reason that I keep making these videos, unless it's like the Chucky's collector dolls where it was just a terrible release. Usually it's the price point that I end up complaining about, and that's where I am again, is I just don't understand why these prices are so exorbitantly high. I will say, again, trying to be fair, at least we have notice. We got like the images of this doll earlier this week, and she's coming out on, I believe, the 30th. I think it's next Friday. So like, it's not the most time ever, but at least people have a solid week to kind of look at the designs for this doll and decide if they want her or not. Whereas a lot of time with Monster High releases, you get like 3 days if you're lucky. So I do appreciate at least that there's some more time for people to consider and kind of weigh the pros and cons and decide whether they want this doll. But again, the price point is kind of what I'm focusing on. Like, it's just so bad. And what's funnier to me is that people have been making comparisons. And the first one that I saw was from the Doll Daddy comparing the Disney Store Alice to the Mattel Collector Alice. And the Disney Store Alice is $17 in the US versus obviously the $100 in the US of the collector doll. And she's definitely less detailed. Like, I'm not trying to take away from the detail of the collector doll, but at the same time, is there enough difference to justify like a $70 price hike? Obviously, the collector Alice comes with a fancy box and she has the house, but it is just a lot. The Disney Store doll has the wrist articulation, still missing the stockings, but like a little bit more excusable on a $17 doll versus a $100 doll, you know? So it's just not a super favorable comparison when you're looking at different Alice dolls and seeing the crazy price of this one and like how little improvement it has from like a base Playline doll. It's just a little bit rough. But to be honest, that's not even the kicker for me. The kicker for me is the Tinkerbell doll that also just released. So this is an Amazon exclusive doll from Mattel that's a Disney doll, obviously. It's Tinkerbell. And I'll have pictures up here as well. I guess if you want my like personal opinion, I'm not a huge fan of the face mold. I think the cheeks are kind of a lot, but I do think that the dress is absolutely beautiful. She's got a cool little stand. Her wings look great. So this is also coming out right now. Like, I think she's currently available and same brand release, right? She's only $50 in the US. And arguably, I feel like she looks better. I love the detail on her dress. Again, I think the wings look super, super great. She has the wrist articulation. I don't think she comes in as fancy packaging, and she doesn't have, like, the house. But she's only $50. So when you compare the two and you look at the Tinkerbell doll being literally half the price of the Alice doll, but realistically speaking, aside from a few extras, the box in the house, they look like either the same quality or Tinkerbell looks a little bit better in my personal opinion. It's super weird, and it's just really funny to me because I feel like this is a terrible release schedule, because if you're going to have a doll like Alice come out, I feel like there's got to be someone somewhere on the team who knows that customers are going to be upset about the price of this doll. Like, they can't be that oblivious, right? Someone in marketing has to know that there's going to be some like negative comments about the price for Alice to release her at basically the same time as another Disney branded doll. I get that they're not from the same movie, but like, it's another Disney branded doll that's half the price and pretty much equal in terms of the actual doll's quality. It's such a weird decision. And like, I know there's probably a lot of stuff behind the scenes. Like, I'm sure Disney has a lot of say in when these products come out, and the Mattel is also involved, so like they have some sort of say. I know that there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but what I'm saying is that someone behind the scenes organized these things, right? And it's just super funny to me that either there was a severe lack of communication, or they just actually didn't think that people wouldn't be even more upset about Alice's price when comparing her to Tinkerbell. I just think it's honestly really comical because people would be upset about Alice's price anyway, right? Like, she's $100. A lot of people don't think that she's worth that. I don't think that she's worth that by any means. And I'm just someone who graduated high school. Like, I didn't go to college for anything, let alone marketing. Like, I just kind of exist, you know? So it's not like I have a specialized education in this, but I can look at this situation and say, yeah, if you're going to release a doll that's super overpriced, maybe don't also release another doll from the same company who's a much better price point. It's just, like, I have to laugh because it's honestly funny to me that no one was like, yeah, this is maybe a bad look. Because I think the existence and the release of Tinkerbell right now just makes Alice look so much worse. Like, if they'd waited a month to release Tinkerbell, I'm sure comparisons still would have been made, but by that point, from like a company standpoint, I'm not saying this is moral, but from a company standpoint, Alice would have already come out and people would have already paid for her, probably begrudgingly for a lot of people, but people would have already paid for her. And now it's like, you've created this conflict from your own brands. It's genuinely comical to me. I am offended, as always, at Mattel's prices because I think that they are continually taking advantage of people. And I think this is honestly pretty egregious to charge $100 for this doll. Like, I don't know. I would say she's probably worth like $50, $60 max. $100, a lot more than that. So I'm offended. But it's kind of at the point where I'm so used to Mattel doing these things and so used to them being ridiculous and overcharging their customers that I have to also laugh, especially when they're making it worse for themselves with other releases that they have coming out. So that's the situation. Those are kind of all of my thoughts on it. Obviously what I say isn't going to change anything. Like, it's not going to make them magically lower the prices. But I don't know, I just kind of like to cover it when I think that they're making weird releases like this. I was kind of on the fence about talking about Alice specifically just because, again, I don't think that she's like as bad as, say, the Maleficent doll, another Disney doll, because Maleficent was $150, I believe, so she was $50 more. So it's like, I think that was a worse release. Or the Chucky and Tiffany release was worse because the circumstances of the release were really, really terrible. So I was kind of on the fence about talking about this Alice doll at all, just because, yeah, she's way expensive, but compared to some other Mattel releases, sadly, this is not the worst thing that they've done to us, in my opinion. But as soon as I saw the Tinkerbell doll, I was like, now I have to talk about it because they're shooting themselves in the foot, and it's like, kind of funny. So that's my take on the situation. I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts on both of the dolls we discussed today, the Tinkerbell and the Alice, and like kind of comparing them. Let me know if you're planning on buying Alice or whether you think that she's worth the price. Obviously, I understand that people are still going to buy her. Like, if you're a huge Alice in Wonderland fan, I understand if you think the price isn't worth it, but you buy her anyway. I've done that before with dolls where it's like, I know that they're not worth it, but I love them so much that I end up buying them. So there's no judgment here to like the consumers. I'm judging Mattel. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day or your night or whatever it might be, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye, guys!